I'm just like, I'm of this mindset that that basically I'm not trying to get anybody to think like me.
Mhm.
I'm not trying to create clones of Derrick. I'm just trying to get people to think, because the reality is, whether it be religion, whether it be career, whether it be relationships, it doesn't matter that most people go through life on autopilot.
Yes.
Most people, it's like you get into a groove and you say, okay, this works and this works, and you just keep on doing that thing over and over again. But I live by a maxim that says that you will never get an intentional result from an accidental effort.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, you really have to be intentional about life. You have to make sure that you're putting in the effort, that you're aiming, you have direction, that you have a plan, that you have some focus. And listen, it's okay to improvise. Like, I love jazz, right?
Yep.
And the whole thing behind jazz is the improvisation, right?
Yes.
How to take something and go kind of off the script and kind of inject your emotion into it. And I'm all for that. But I'm at the end of the day, I'm really kind of a numbers guy. And I think that is what really kind of helped me get to where I am, because I just kind of reached a point where Christianity, well, I mean, first of all, let me say religion in general and Christianity specifically stopped making sense. And to me, it has to make sense in order to be viable.
Yes.
And that's another thing too. See, like faith, the whole concept of faith is I'm accepting something that I know doesn't really add up, but I trust it anyway, right? And that's the whole concept behind faith. But I've said this, that if I say, Ellen, pray 1,000 prayers,
Yeah.
you know, be specific, pray 1,000 prayers about 1,000 specific things, and I promise you, you'll be lucky if you hit 1%. You'll be really fortunate if you hit 1%. But if I say, Ellen, go out and start your car 1,000 times. Your car, if it's anything, you know, relatively new, you know, it's going to start 1,000 times. Yeah. It's not going to complain. It's not going to ask you questions. It's not going to ask you whether you believe, whether you have faith or anything. It's just simply going to execute the command that you give it, right?
Yes.
And that's the way I look at things now. I had to get to a point where I could find a way to make things make sense. And one quick thing I want to share before I don't want to just kind of ramble on and dominate your time.
No, but, you're good.
You know, I started looking into quantum physics, and quantum physics really helped me out because it helped me to understand an unseen realm. Because this was the whole thing, you know, back in the 1920s, when Albert Einstein was coming off his Nobel Prize win. This guy from Copenhagen, Denmark, Niels Bohr, said, hold on, wait a minute, man. You know, you had something really good. I mean, he won the Nobel Prize. This was this was accepted as a scientific triumph. But Niels Bohr said that there's something else. And so he began to draw off some studies and experiments that had been done earlier in the late 19th century by Max Planck and John Clerk Maxwell. And anyway, long and short of it is that you know, Planck came up with this thing, this quantization or measurability of the infinitely small, right?
Wow.
And so this basically turned the whole concept of atomic physics on its ear, because, you know, you have the standard, the periodic table, and they had just kind of figured that out. And now here you have like the standard model that says, okay, what we know what atoms are made of, protons, neutrons, electrons, but what are these particles in the atoms made of? What are electrons, neutrons, and protons made of? Well, they're made of leptons, fermions, bosons, right? And so you get you get infinitely deeper into it. Now, this was the thing, is that the quantum deals with things you cannot see.
That's right.
And that's what spirituality is. It's how do we deal with or relate to what we can't see. And so I thought about this too, because and now I'm trying to think who was it that came up with the concept of quantum entanglement, and that's escaping me right now. But quantum entanglement basically says if you take two quantum particles and you entangle them, in other words, you basically introduce them to each other in such a way that they are impacted by and influenced by one another. And no matter where if you take these things and you divide them by any distance, you separate them by any distance, whatever you do to one immediately impacts the other. Right. And so in human terms, in spiritual terms, if you've ever had like a loved one that when they left time, they left the mortal coil, they passed on, there's always something of them in you that you can feel. I mean, now you don't know exactly what it is, and frankly, science really doesn't know what it is, but you can kind of theorize it based on quantum entanglement. Because once you have been introduced to someone on an emotional level, you now have an entanglement with them. And so no matter what the distance, and that's why like a mother can know that their child is in danger immediately when the child is in danger. Irrespective of the distance, there have been stories, countless stories of men and women who were killed in combat. And their mothers knew instantly. They knew something was not right. Something was disrupted. Well, that's the entanglement, right? So no matter what the distance is, and so even when we leave time and transition into eternity, that quantum entanglement is still there. And so we still feel their presence. And I believe that the energy that was your loved one also recognizes that energy. They recognize that, and feeling is maybe not the best way to put it, but they recognize that energy shift. So that was one of the things that kind of helped me, because now I have something that I can quantify, I can measure, right? It's something that has become tangible, measurable, and repeatable. I can actually say that if this, then that. And granted, you don't want to live your life according to a flow chart. You don't want to get into a binary decision-making paradigm, but at the same time, you want to understand why things happen, at least at a fundamental level. Because, again, to use the illustration of a car, when someone puts the key in the ignition and they turn the key, there are like 1,000 processes that happen between the key turn and something happening at the engine. You don't know, unless you're an engineer, you don't know what all of those processes are.
Not at all.
But you have a clue that I know that this car, that if I put gasoline in it and I make sure that it has a good battery in it and that I have the key for it, that I can engage these processes repeatably.
Right?
And produce some result. And that's the problem with like with spirituality, with religion, is that you don't have repeatable results. And here's the thing. It's one thing to not have a repeatable result when it's a luxury. In other words, like the lottery. Winning the lottery is a luxury.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's one thing to not figure out the lottery. But when your child is stricken with cancer.
Oh my God. Yes.
Now you need to know something.
Yes.
And this has become a crucial make or break life or death situation.
Yes.
And so religion has never produced the answer to the immediate.
Wow. Yeah.
So anyway,
No, that's the whole point. The point is for you to be able to share. So I know that you had, like, I love what you're saying first off about quantum physics. It's only been within the last couple years that I've been diving into quantum physics. And the only reason, I'm not really scientific, but the only reason I started doing that was because things were not adding up in the areas of intercessory prayer. Things were not adding up, with what I saw in the other nations where I was, serving, because I was just not seeing things. I was seeing this, you have to have this belief in this God, okay, who's loving and all knowing and just loves the planet. But then I would see starving children in front of me, and I would see disease in front of me, and I would see all of these things in front of me, and I could not at all figure it out. And to be completely honest, I know for a while I was pretty blinded. I was just like, well, we just believe in faith, and I stand in faith, and I was an intercessor, and it was like, we push through the devil, and we, yada yada yada.
Timing, not our timing.
Oh, right, that one, right. But I would go back into my room because I was a leader. I'd go back into my room, and I kid you not, I would just cry, because I would be like, what am I doing? What am I offering these individuals? What am I giving them in the immediate felt need? The woman who's bringing her child with malaria to me. What am I bringing that child? And it was very frustrating to me. It was very hard for me, because I could package it all a bazillion different ways spiritually. And I'm thankful, because I'm a seeker of truth. I am. I want to know the truth. I've always been like that. And I'm thankful that I was able to just suddenly be like, I think I need to question this. And that was scary as hell for me. Scary. Because I mean, 35 years in the Christian faith, it's like, wait a minute, like I'm questioning this God, I'm questioning the Bible, I'm questioning everything I believe, but how could I not? Because if I didn't question, and this is for me personally, maybe not everybody else, I was lacking some sort of compassion then, because I could no longer go on seeing the results not happening the way that I was told they were supposed to happen, and then feeling guilt because they weren't happening, this cycle.
Well, something that really tripped me out was, I would, and this happened to me. I'm guilty of this. I'd be getting ready to go preach on Sunday morning, and I can't find my car keys.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, Lord, you know what I have to do today. You know that you've impregnated me with this word. I gotta get out and I gotta release it. You know my need, and I'm gonna trust in you. And then I find my keys.
Oh yes.
And that's great, right? It's great.
Oh, absolutely.
Except at the same time that I'm finding my keys, some woman in the Sudan is holding her lifeless child in her arms.
Yes.
Now, she prayed. I know she did. And I don't care what, that's the thing. Until you know that there's no God, or that you're pretty sure that you're, that you're near gnosis in your atheism. Until you get to that point, you're gonna cry out for some higher power to kind of step in and help you out. And so the conclusion that I came to was that when I get a blessing, I'm getting a blessing at someone else's expense.
Oh.
And here was the thing,
wow.
Like, my second to youngest son is type 1 diabetic, and he was diagnosed when he was 4 years old, and he's almost 19 now. And this was a big thing for me and my wife. I mean, it was like, it shattered our whole family paradigm. It was traumatic. And so we spent almost 4 days at the Children's Hospital in Little Rock, Arkansas, because we had to be taught how to manage his condition. But while we were there, you know, and I can't say enough about children's hospitals all over the place. These are wonderful people doing, I mean, you know, honestly, if people would just put money into the children's hospitals instead of putting it in fucking churches, you know, the world would change dramatically. But I digress. You know, they give you these little red wagons, you know, in the room that you're in, and you can put your baby or your child in one of these little red wagons, and you can pull them around the hospital so they don't have to stay cooped up in their room. And here I am, I'm thinking that the world is coming to a fucking end because my baby has type 1 diabetes. And this is something that's not curable.
Yeah.
Right? But then as we're going around the halls of the children's hospital, I saw parents who were sitting holding each other and sobbing. I saw children with no hair and IV fluids carrying chemotherapy into their bodies. I saw children that couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't see. I saw children who were missing parts of their head.
Yes.
And I'm thinking to myself, at that, now this was the preacher in me then, because I was like, Lord, I said, give me the power to walk through these halls and just bring, like how people walk through Peter's shadow to get healed. Let me be, and I'm sincere.
Yeah.
I don't just want to see my kid, because what I realized from walking through these halls, that in the big scheme of things, our problem was pretty small. It was huge to us, but in the big scheme of things, it was pretty small. And I'm like, okay. And I would, and you know, we spend a lot of time in the Children's Hospital Network over the years. You know, we volunteered, we've done different things and all that. And what I've learned is that, you know, like people pray and these kids die.
I know.
You know, but people pray that their quarterback throws the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. People pray that their favorite player hits the game-winning three-pointer. People pray that they get a job. People pray that they find a spouse. But it's like, I'm going to tell you something, you know, until you've had to, you know, it's like burying a parent is kind of expected. It's the cycle of life. Mm-hmm. You know, your elders, your grandmother, your parents. But burying a child or burying a spouse is a whole different ball game. Mm. I had to do both, you know, in my lifetime. And what I realize is that if there is a God, at the very least, this God should make sure that every child has what he or she needs to grow into adulthood. Now, you know, accidents happen, stuff like that. I get it, you know, you can't cover everything. But if we're talking about an omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent God, surely he'd be in the midst of children going through this. And then they say, oh, well, you know, like God may have needed them home sooner. Well, why the fuck did they bring them into the world?
What answer is that?
Yeah. I mean, and it's like, I'll tell you something. It's like, I get really, really hot when I hear people say shit like that. And so this was another thing too, because like my great niece, almost 8 years ago, she passed away of brain cancer. She was 10 years old. And that was, I think that was the first time that I really had a come to Jesus moment with God. I mean, I'm like out in the yard shaking my fist now. God damn it, you got to explain this to me.
Yes.
You know, And people say, well, God created everything. God doesn't owe you an explanation. I'm gonna say bullshit to that, right? Because if I tell my kid that they can't do something, or that I need them to do something, or that this is why we're having a change in our family dynamic or whatever, I owe them an explanation as a parent. Yes. Because otherwise, I'm just giving them something. I'm saying, I want you to just take what I say at face value and don't question anything. I'm teaching them the wrong thing. But if I owe my kid an explanation and I can give my kid an explanation, that makes me infinitely better than any God.
Wow. Yeah, but remember, his thoughts are higher than ours.
You know what? Listen.
I know. I'm hearing you.
I know, but what I'm responding to that because I know there are people that are saying that right now.
Yep.
And my thoughts as a 60-year-old man are certainly higher than a 4-year-old's. However, if I'm doing something, I'm in this child's life and I have some kind of dynamic or relationship with this child, whether I'm a parent, a grandparent, an uncle or aunt or something like that, I owe this child the dignity of an explanation. Now, if God doesn't give us an explanation, then that means that God doesn't see dignity in us, that he doesn't see a need for us to understand. And here's the thing, that if God is perfect, why does he create imperfection?
Oh, come on.
If he's perfect, why do kids get cancer? Why do people get cancer? We're created in his image and his likeness, right? Does God get cancer? Does God get a fucking cold? No.
Right.
But people, COVID, man, it's like, this was so, and
COVID.
funny, not funny. But at one point in the city of Detroit, 12 bishops from the Church of God in Christ died of COVID in the span of a week.
Yes.
Now, these are bishops, right? I was a bishop. Your bishops are praying. Bishops are who the pastors come to get prayer. If anybody knows it, if anybody understands it, the bishop understands it. But here these bishops are dropping like flies. Where's God? I mean, these are God's men.
Right.
God's women, because there were a couple of, the women that died, they weren't Kojic, because Kojic doesn't do women bishops, but that's another thing.
That's a whole other story. Okay.
Yep. But, basically, this is the conclusion that I came to, Ellen, was this. When I looked at it on the whole, holistically, that either God was a narcissistic dick or he doesn't exist. And me personally, I cannot see someone that has the ability to create an entire universe and has purview to the most minute details of a person's life and will not fix it. Because listen, my son, type 1 diabetes, if I had unlimited power for 24 hours, fixing his malady would be number one on my list.
Right.
Number one. Yeah. Then my wife has some autoimmune issues. I would fix that, right? And then I would make my way to the nearest children's hospital, and I'd fix the babies. That would be my first go-to, and I would do this until I was out of time or out of power, whichever came first. But if God is unlimited and he can't manage that God ain't shit.
I hear you. Oh my gosh. I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I think a lot of people within the church are afraid to question, are afraid to look at these things. And I had to on the mission field. I couldn't keep going. Well, I mean, who are we kidding? I can't do that. I have a heart, I have compassion. And you're asking me to just say, well, God has a plan, or his ways are higher than ours, or, the devil, or there's sin. This was a big one in one of the nations I was in, that they have sin in their life. And this is why all these things are happening. And I remember just thinking, these are not answers that are satisfying me. They can't be satisfying everybody else either. But nobody's questioning what is that? Why do you feel that there is this lack of questioning God? Because it feels like it permeates everything.
Listen, do I have an answer for that? Oh,
yes, you do, Derrick.
I've got a fucking answer for that, because the whole premise of religion is manipulation and control.
Okay.
It began with someone coming up with an explanation as to where the sun went at night, or why the water rises and falls. You had to have some, explanation for that. So primitive man said, Big Daddy in the sky.
Oh, yes.
Right? Because that's easy. But then what happens is that you begin to build a machine around this. And I love it when I say, because this is my premise, that if you think of psychology, you think of philosophy, you think of medicine, you think of chemistry, think of biology, think of engineering, mathematics, whatever, physics, whatever, right? And you can draw a line as to the contribution of these intellectual disciplines to society. But theology, you can't, because theology is a gross consumer. It's not a producer.
Come on.
It can't produce anything. And it's useless, it's worthless. But the thing is that what religion did was built institutions of education that said that in order for you to learn classical subject matter, that you also had to be steeped in our religious tradition. And so the first universities in Europe were all based out of the church. And so when people say, well, the church contributed mightily to science. No, science happened in spite of religion, not because of it. And so now you have all of these people. It's so funny to me, like a lot of these groups, a lot of these Facebook groups, you'll have people splitting hairs about Gerard and Marcion, and they split hairs about all these different Origen and Augustine and all of this hair splitting about theology. And they do this in the middle of George Floyd being murdered, right? School shootings,
come on,
church shootings, shootings in supermarkets, right? They split these hairs in the midst of all of this. Now, if theology were actually something that contributed something to the whole of humanity, the first thing that they would do is they would get off the hair splitting for a minute and say, what can we do to fix this immediate problem?
Come on.
But instead, this is going to be a hard one, right?
You're okay.
That theology, prayer, Christian study, all of it is essentially a form of intellectual masturbation, right? It gets you off, but it doesn't do anything for the person who is the object of this, or the subject, right? That you just like you're watching porn and you're having some session, right? That's the same thing that's happening with prayer. It's the same thing that happens with theology. It's like I'm sitting up here and I'm looking at stuff, and instead of trying to figure out what do I do to make this better, I'm just kind of gratifying my own self.
I hear you. I understand.
And and so I basically got to the point, Ellen, where I said I couldn't participate in this anymore. I couldn't. I felt like I was a hypocrite. And more recently, I was a member of the Heretic Happy Hour podcast, and working with three of the most intelligent people that I know. Keith Giles, Katie Valentine, Matthew DiStefano, wonderful people, right? And we're all like in different places faith-wise, but the thing for me is I kind of reached a point where I couldn't get on this podcast week after week and have these discussions about the Bible. I don't give a flat flying fuck about the Bible, about God, about Jesus, or any of it. All of it can pack up and get the fuck out. Because none of it, 0% is helping anybody be better in any way. Does it help you physically? No, it doesn't. Does it help you mentally? Well, you could say that it does, but you know what? Meditation, yoga or martial arts would achieve the same effect, right? And then you talk about the aggregation of people, like coming together on a corporate purpose. You can do that at Starbucks, or you can go to Toastmasters, or you can join the Rotary or whatever. Absolutely. There are a million ways to split that hair. It doesn't have to be something religious, but it could be something purposeful, something beneficial to the rest of humanity. And so I just kind of reached a point where I felt that having these discussions, every 2 weeks that we're recording the podcast, that I really felt like I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't there. And honestly, I say to people all the time, and it's funny, like Aaron Tomlinson and Aaron's my co-host on Free Aaron. And if you haven't interviewed Aaron, you need to get him on here too. Because
the next one I'm asking, yep.
Right. But Aaron and I, we are both ex-pastors, right? And we know scripture pretty well. And so we'll pull it out, but we'll pull it out not to try to teach a lesson around it, but to try to teach a lesson away from it, right? In other words, this is not the peg in the sand. This is not the tether, but this is rather the launching pad, right? That's where we're going. How do we get escape velocity from this? Yeah. And so that, like in the Heretic Happy Hour, we did some episodes where we talked about conspiracy theories, and we talked about stupid shit the Bible says. And those to me were fun. That kind of stuff is fun. But it's like, talking about other things that, differentiating between the, covenants and all this other. Listen, I just can't. Right. It doesn't do anything for me. And I ask myself, this is my morning mantra, if you will. I wake up every day with the same thing. What can I do to help humanity? Yes. This is how I begin my day every day. And then at the end of every day, I ask myself, what did you do to help humanity? How much, if you did, move the needle? How much, if you did, push the envelope? How much did you prompt people to think? And again, you were talking about why do people feel like they can't question anything? Well, what religion has done is it has created an unquestionable apparatus.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That God is God, and who are you to question God? And the people who God chooses to teach his word, who are you to question them? And it's so funny. I get this all the time. Like, people say to me, well, you clearly haven't studied the Bible enough. And I'm like, well, you know what? I've been in ministry for 30 years, been a student or a teacher of theology, have been a pastor and an ecumenical leader. I think I know. I think that I've accrued enough bona fides to say that I have the ability to speak on these subjects, right? But I get these from people that probably haven't read the entire book of Proverbs.
Right. Yes.
So it's funny, how basically the vast majority of Christians don't even read their Bible. Let me give you, I gotta share this, because this is beautiful, right? Because what happened 2 weeks ago, Roe v. Wade got overturned, right? So a woman's constitutional right to an abortion is overturned. Now, I used to be a pro-lifer. I used to be one of those guys that carried the picket fence or a picket sign, right? On the line, defending the unborn, right? But then if you go back and you study the Bible, you know what the Bible says about the unborn child?
Yep.
Nothing.
Yep.
However, that there are at least 8 references in the Bible where God commands someone to kill a child in its mother's womb.
Right.
And then on top of that, you talk about the flood, you talk about Sodom and Gomorrah, you talk about Egypt, and how many babies has God killed in the name of his name?
Right.
God is the biggest serial killer in the history of humanity. But this Bible talks about killing babies.
Yeah.
And if
dashing babies against rocks.
Yeah. So if you read it with a flat understanding, right, with no nuance, then what you have to come to, the conclusion you have to come to, is that God is actually all about abortion, that he loves it, that he kind of gets off on it. That's the conclusion you have to come to. There's nothing about protecting the unborn, nothing about the sanctity of life or anything like that. It's like, there are so many other instances where, so God's so pro-life, right? First homicide, Cain kills Abel. God says, okay, I'm going to put a mark on Cain so that people don't kill him, right?
Right.
That's cool. But then you go to, what is it, Numbers chapter 6?
Oh my God. Yes.
Where, some poor slob is picking up sticks so that he could keep his family warm on the Sabbath, and they stone him to death.
Right.
And God said do it.
Right.
So
the Sabbath.
That's the Sabbath. You violated the Sabbath.
Right.
So, it's like God actually kind of gets off on murder. I mean, and the culmination of it was he had to kill his own son to keep from killing you.
Yes.
That's insane. When you look at it, if you look at it with a critical thinking lens, and strip away all the cognitive dissonance and strip away all the what do you call it? Cognitive dissonance, confirmation bias, strip away all of that. And you're just like, whoa, this is really fucked up.
Yeah. And see, that happened to me when I was overseas. Everything happened once I got outside of American Christianity. There is something to be said about American Christianity. It is just what it is.
Yeah.
And once I got away from it, I began to really critically think the Bible. I started reading stuff in the Old Testament, and I'm like, how come I never saw that before? It was like I had never seen that babies were dashed against rocks, but it was God who commanded that babies be dashed against rocks. Mm-hmm. And I started to see these things, and I thought to myself, okay, now what do I do? Because I'm on the mission field, right?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do? Like, I'm supposed to be preaching from the Bible. I couldn't do it. I struggled with the whole thing. I wrestled with the whole thing because I was starting to see what I had never seen before. I could not believe that I went all these years, and this is just the truth, 30-some years reading this book and being okay. Literally, okay, let me see if I know where I'm at on Facebook. Being okay with God killing all these people. Yeah. Being okay with, let's even look at the virgin birth. Okay, if we're gonna, this one really tripped me because I have abuse in areas of my background and different type of stuff. And And suddenly I had this understanding of something that Mary actually never asked to be impregnated. Now, I don't know how that like crossed my brain, how it got in my critical thinking, but all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute. She actually didn't ask for this. She didn't ask.
She didn't ask, but you know something though? This is my concession to the Bible humpers. I don't call them Bible thumpers. I call them Bible humpers. Is this? Mary said, "Be it unto me according to your word."
That's right.
Be it unto me according to your word. So she didn't ask, but she consented. Right now, watch this. This is where it gets interesting.
I know.
Because Mary was allegedly somewhere between 13 and 15 years old.
Oh, I know.
So in today's society, we would say that the constraint of the age of consent was violated here.
Absolutely. And it would be right. Yeah.
It'd be right. And so essentially this God, in order to produce a savior, decided to engage in a little child rape. You know, this isn't me making it up. This is what's there. And if you look at it through a critical lens, this is what you see.
Right. Right. And it's doing that. It's giving yourself permission to do that. And see, then it went even further. Okay. It went not just what I saw in the Bible, then it transferred over to life. What did I see in America? What did I see, you know, with racism or homophobia? I mean, I'm a lesbian. So, okay, you can only imagine how that all goes down. It doesn't go down. It didn't go down with family. It doesn't go down with church. It doesn't go down with society in some places, not all places, but in general, there's still this sort of like, whoa thing. And it began to cause me to unpeel, like my eyes became open, Derrick. And I know you know this longer than me, but they became opened to see shootings for what they were, to see racism for what it was. I was starting to see that things I had never seen before.
Well, let me tell you this, because I want you to get a good feeling about feeling the way you do, because I know I've seen what you've posted, what you've been posting and all of that. And I've been a fan of yours as well. Let me just say that. But you know, when you know, Black Lives Matter became a thing, you know, you were one of the people that was very outspoken about this. Now, here's the thing. People will say, well, see, Christians are out here speaking out against this, but watch this. They are the outliers. That if you look at the old statistical bell curve, right, that what you would find is that the people who are speaking out against racism, they're not even in the meaty, they're not in the meaty part of the bell curve. Fuck, they are not even in the tail. They're outliers. They're statistically insignificant scatter shots outside the bell curve, right? And so people say, well, you paint Christianity with a broad brush. No, I tell people that, you know, I've said this to other Christians or Jesus followers or Jesus believers, whatever you want to call them, that because there are some good people in that population.
Totally.
But those people who are the good people are the outliers. They're not even in the bell curve. They're not in that. They're not in that part at all. They're outliers. They're not even on the map, right? This is what I found, because like when I was preaching, I got turned on to Andrew Womack.
Oh yes.
And now I was like all about God's unconditional love and unlimited grace, and that was my thing. So that's what I'm preaching. I'm preaching that. But then I see these things like where, you know, where Black people are being slaughtered by police, and I see things like the Voting Rights Act being dismantled, and I see things like Donald Trump enabling white supremacists and all of these things. I see all these things, and so I'm the kind of guy, I've always been this way all my life. I've never been one to sit idly by while injustice happens. I've been involved in civil rights. I've been involved in all kinds of political things throughout my entire adult life. Now, what happened is that a lot of these quote unquote grace teachers, they would say to me, Derrick, I know you're upset. I know that this troubles you, but don't talk about social justice. Don't talk about racism. Don't talk about poverty. Don't talk about politics. Just preach Jesus and his unconditional love and unlimited grace. And let's just preach that, right? And I was doing that, but then Aaron Tomlinson did a teaching one time that blew my mind, where he said, where did Jesus teach unconditional love? He didn't. It's not in the book. This is there by inference only. Well, what I did then is I engaged in a thought experiment. And I've told the story many times, but I'm going to tell it again for your audience. Sure. And it's this, that I decided to make a few strategically placed in time social media posts involving the word fuck.
Yeah.
And the reason why I chose that word is because there is no misinterpreting fuck. When you hear it, you know exactly what, I mean, depending on the context that is being used in, you know what the connotation is, and there's no ambiguity, right? Because you could say damn, you could say ass, you could say shit, you know, like people will say, well, Noah made the boat out of shit, Tim Wood, right? And
right, like that.
You know, they'll try to use a little alliteration to try to clean up their act, right? But, you know, or they'll talk about, you know, Balaam's ass, you know, like get your ass in gear, you know, and they'll preach messages like that. But you can't mess with fuck. You get away with saying certain things in the pulpit, but fuck's not one of them. But I did that. So here was the deal. I put these posts out there, and these same people that were just really trying to goad me into just teaching love, talking about love, don't talk about all this other stuff. They were like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. You're a man of God. You're a pastor. You're a husband. You're a father. I can't believe you said that. Oh my God, that's the worst thing you've ever done, and all of this stuff. And I said, you know, some of their folks, I said, you have been a unknowing participant in a thought experiment.
Yep. Totally.
Because what I discovered from my thought experiment and by your reaction is that the word fuck is far more important to you than a black man being killed in the public space.
Yeah.
That's what that told me. And so when I saw all of these people that they're defending Donald Trump, listen, if you had a human a personification of the 7 deadly sins, that dude is that guy.
Yeah.
He's a complete fuck up. I don't care how you slice it. And people say, oh, well, yeah, he's a human being. He's one of God's creation. You know,
oh my God.
You know, listen, I don't even give that hall pass anymore. No, this guy is a complete fuck up. And whatever happens to him now, he bought it. He owns it, right? But anyway, I'm gonna say this, that all these people defended this and they supported it. And so the people who are supporting Trump, Ellen, are in that meaty part of the bell curve. They're not the outliers. They are the central population. They are what defines it. And when I saw that, and coupled with what I knew about how the Bible was canonized and how the politics of the people who were involved in the canonization and all of these things, when I began to look at all of these things in total, I asked myself, I said, is God a dick, or does he not exist? And I chose to go with not exist, because if God is a dick, then that means I'm better than God. And why would I owe this person any obeisance, any respect, right, any worship, when he's just a real shitty person? Why would I even engage in this? And then more to the point, why would I engage in all of these in intellectual gymnastics and trying to make sense out of it?
Right. Exactly. Oh my goodness, there's so many ways I could go here. But for me, it's just common sense. It's common sense to me to care about what is happening with Black Lives Matter, what is happening with shootings. To me, this is just common sense. It doesn't take Jesus's love for me to care about the situation.
Well, let me say something too, because I didn't know that you were lesbian. I never knew that, but I want to share this with you because I have a really good friend, and you may know her. Her name is PK Langley.
Oh my God, yes, PK.
Okay, so years ago when PK came out, you know, and PK is a very good friend of mine. She is like my sister, right? But I was like one of those guys who was preaching, God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. I was preaching this, right? Yeah. And so when PK was rolling this out and letting people know where, you know, who she really was, you know, I had to really make some decisions, right? And so I said, okay, I cannot abandon her. I love her. She's my sister. You know, we've exchanged a lot of ideas, you know, and all of this, and I couldn't leave her out to dry. So I said, okay, I will tolerate it because of her.
No.
But hang on. So I was like, okay, so you know, I'm woke. I'm woke. I'm enlightened because I can tolerate, right? But then somebody asked me, they said, well, what would happen if a lesbian or a gay couple, they came and asked you to officiate their wedding? What would you do? Oh, well, no, I can't do that. Can't do that. And then I have another friend, Will Rucker. And when Will came out and, you know, and announced that he was gay and that he and his husband, that they were going to get married. And Will, another one, my good friend, we're both from Detroit. You know, we spent a lot of time talking on the phone and everything. And then I was in Vegas for a basketball tournament for my kids. And so I told Will I was in town. He said, well, let's go out and have coffee. So we went out, we had coffee. And as I'm talking to him and he's telling me, you know, he's telling me different things. And I stopped him and I said, Will, I said, I owe you an apology, brother. And he said, why, man? And I said, because, you know, like when PK told me that she was gay, I said that, okay, I'll tolerate it. And I said, no, I said, I can't do that anymore. It's like if I celebrate someone because of their Latinx or because of their Blackness or because of their whiteness, their Irishness or Frenchness or whatever, right? That I celebrate that because that is part of their makeup.
Yes, yes.
Their inner being, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. And so I told him, I said, at that point, I said, I will no longer tolerate. I'm going to celebrate. And that was when I changed my whole paradigm about sexuality. And again, if you go back and look in the Bible, it you know, it really doesn't say anything about homosexual relationships. It does talk about temple prostitution, and it does talk about men having sex with underage boys, which all of that's bad. Okay, but it doesn't talk about sexuality in a very concise sense. So it's not, even the Bible is not against, you know, what you call nuanced sexuality or non-binary sexuality. Mm-hmm. So, you know, my thing was that I'm not going to, that changed my whole paradigm about people. I said, I'm no longer going to just tolerate somebody. I'm either going to celebrate them or I'm going to delineate space between me and them. Because see, here's the thing. If you're a white supremacist, I'm not going to celebrate you. I'm going to put a wall between me and you.
Absolutely.
You know, that's just something. If you're a Nazi, you know, I'm not. You know, if you're, you know, if you're against anybody because of race, creed, or color, you know, or sexuality, if you're the kind of person that wants to destroy or castigate, I don't need any part of you. I'll just build a wall there and say, well, you know, you're good over there and I'm good over here. And as long as you don't fuck around over here, we good.
Right.
Oh,
thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I do know PK. She's in Florida. I'm in Florida. So I did spend a weekend with her and her partner and wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. And these are these topics, right? These are these topics right now that are the heavy hitters by the Christian community, is homosexuality and abortion and all of these things. And I think when I look back on so much of it, because I had to do a lot of conversion therapy. I went through a lot of conversion therapy, and I'm not even going to give it much time, other than it was the most. And at the time, I did not know this. Okay, I didn't know. So I'm fair to myself to say I just didn't know. I was blinded, like, where I was at. But there was so much heavy-handed use of deliverance and praying. I mean, people had hands literally on my head and like screaming for demons to come out. I had people who were holding me down on the ground, praying for the demon of lesbianism to be cast out. Now, I know when I'm saying this right now, I know there's a lot of people in my circle who know me, and they're like, wow, what's happened to Ellen? What's happened to me is I came to an understanding. My eyes opened up away from the conditioning. It's been peeling back. It continues to peel back. And to be completely honest, it's time for me to speak up. It's time for me to say, you know what? Yes, I went through this. It was wrong. It was abusive. It was spiritual abuse. It was submission in a way that was so damaging. And then, I'm walking around trying to cut off these parts of me, because that's what Christianity teaches. It doesn't teach integration. It teaches cut off. That's a sin, so you cut it off. And so then I'm walking around like naked, because I'm thinking to myself, I'm not my full self. And then to make it even worse here, I went into marrying a man, literally, because I remember this pastor said to me, if you want to be more reputable in ministry, then the one thing that you can do is stop looking like a Jezebel and marry a man. Well, because I had all these needs for approval, all the whole shit that was there, I did it. So I married a man. It was the most miserable thing I've ever done in my life, because I was living, first of all, a lie. I was living because I was forced to do this thing. I had to look right, act right. It was all about appearances of evil, the whole thing. And I can't be quiet anymore. Like, I just can't be quiet. I can't be quiet about homosexuality. I can't be quiet. I mean, abortion. Let me just touch on something here with abortion, because I used to be very much a pro-lifer, but then I went overseas, and then I started to see situations in Africa and other places where we had to do abortions. Okay, it was as simple as that, or the mother's going to die. Like this whole concept. I feel like Christians can, and I was the same way, can be extremely tunnel focused, and they focus on this one thing, but they're not looking at the people at large. They're not looking at the countless groups that they're going to affect because of their biblical belief or their persuasion or whatever it is they're preaching. And I'm sorry, as a social justice woman, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do it anymore. As simple as that. I don't like what's happened to the African American community. I don't like what's happened to any community at all. I don't like how the church has wielded itself and is saying that they're bringing all these great things into the world. We're going to create revival. Well, you know what? I'm hoping revival never, ever happens, because all we're doing is reviving this system that is evil and dark and horrible.
Now, listen, you know what? This is what made me think of revival, right? Mary Frances Shelley and her novel. I feel like I know.
Yes.
That revival is basically unnaturally resuscitating the dead. If it's dead, leave it dead. Let it die. And this is the thing, like for me in religion, I see religion dying. I not just in Christianity, but in Islam and in Hinduism, I see it dying. People say, oh, well, like in Christianity's dying in the West, but it's growing in Africa and growing in India and growing in China. the only reason why it's growing in those places is because information is not diffuse yet. That the minute that information becomes as diffuse as it is in the West, it'll die there too. And you're already seeing it. It's like there are many people that come from India that leave their religious traditions behind.
Yes.
And they take a more secular approach. You know, people that come from China and the Philippines and Cambodia, the place of Vietnam where Buddhism is very strong, that they come over to the West and they unload those spiritual traditions. That basically, that once people get an understanding of the information that's available, and they understand that religious texts are nothing but fairy tales, then they pretty much, you know, they unload it, they shit can it. And that's honestly, religion made sense when people didn't understand how to explain natural phenomena. They didn't know how lightning and thunder happened. They didn't know why it got dark at night. They didn't know why there were stars in the sky or why the moon shone. They didn't know. They didn't know why floods happened. They didn't know why droughts happened. They didn't know. So their thing was, okay, well, we'll just chalk it up to the big sky daddy and it'll be all good. But now we have scientific understanding of most natural phenomena. We understand things. And then like abortion, right? And I'm going to pick on that because people will say, well, you know, it's an innocent life. It's an innocent life. Well, you know, yes, but also no, because the thing is that this child is a passenger aboard the ship of the woman. And at any time, this is something I learned from the Navy, is that a captain of a ship at sea is sovereign. That he has the right to do whatever he wants. Now, he'll have to answer to it if he does something wrong, but he's pretty much God at the helm. The woman is the God of her own body. And at any given point, for whatever reason, she can decide to stop the ship and eject the passenger. Now, that's kind of harsh, but it's the truth. The woman has the right, sovereign authority to dictate what takes place in her body or on her body. You know, we cannot talk about having individual rights. You know, it's like when you talk about freedom of speech and, you know, freedom of assembly and freedom of the press and freedom to be secure in your person and all of that falls flat if we cannot agree on the right to the sovereignty of our own bodies. And so a child gestating in the mother's womb is not a person legally until that child emerges from the womb. At that point, it receives its citizenship by birthright and other documentation that officially codifies them as a human being. But you cannot deduct your fetus from your taxes. You cannot put your fetus on your health insurance. There is a whole bunch of stuff that you can't do. You know, and we're finding out now that you can't even drive your fetus as a second person in an HOV lane on an American highway.
Right.
So if you look at that, and then the Bible, if we want to go back to the Bible, life begins according to the Bible when the breath of life is first taken. That when you draw your first breath, you are considered alive. When you breathe your last breath, you're considered to be dead. But when you are in the womb, you're not breathing as a person outside the womb is.
Mhm.
You're totally dependent on this other body, this host. And that host has the primacy, the sovereignty. And I don't care what anybody says. It's like, I will support a woman's right to choose with my own life. Period, full stop.
Yep.
So I used to be that guy. I used to be that pro-life guy. And what about the babies? We have to consider the babies. We have to make sure that we're protecting them. But you know, if you can't see, that's the other thing too. You know, we want to care about the babies in the womb, but a shooter can go into a school and kill a bunch of kids that are already alive.
Yep.
And instead of doing something to defend the kids, we defend the guns.
Oh, don't get me started on that one.
There's something really twisted about that logic, but that is Western Christian logic.
Yeah.
And so, for you know, I'll say this, and you know, we can get ready to land the plane. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Oh, good.
But I want to see Christianity die. And when it dies, I don't want it to die a comfortable, quiet death, like someone that's lived a full, rich life. I want to see it die an epic, flaming death, so that people have no ambiguity about what happened here. You know, that this shit crashed and burned, and we watched it like Evel Knievel on pay-per-view. That's listen, that's the way I want to see it. I'm up to here with religion. And I don't give a fuck about Christianity. I don't give a fuck about God. I don't give a fuck about Jesus. I don't give a fuck about the Bible. You can have all of it. But sooner or later, information and knowledge will become so diffuse that that whole religious paradigm will not have anything to grasp onto. And it will fall, and it will die, and it will wither and writhe, and it'll gnash its teeth. It'll be like a spider that you hit with bug spray. And it'll be a beautiful thing.
And I think there's going to be a lot to be said when that happens. I probably won't be here when that happens. But
oh, well, you know what? Listen, keep doing what you're doing, because I'm doing what I'm doing my part. Basically, what I found is I tried to pull the plug, but I found out the plug is hardwired. So because it's hardwired, you're going to need some tools to kind of undo it. But I'm trying to do my part.
yeah,
I'm trying to do my part to get the plug out of the wall. And so as long as we're doing that, as long as we're actively pursuing the destruction of religion, and if enough people see this and join in, strength in numbers, eventually we'll see it fall. And I'm like I said, I turn 60 next month, and I'm hoping that I'll see it in my lifetime.
I hope you do. Yep. I hope you do. Derrick, I just honor you. Seriously, your process really, I don't know. I love these type of candid conversations where we can just be honest, where we can just say, hey, this isn't working. I don't see this. This is not matching up. And I haven't done, half as much study as you have, but I'm telling you, I'm on a study, and I see, and I can't go back, and my eyes can't close anymore. And I can't put little, my ears, here I am, my fingers in I can't do that anymore, because too many people are being hurt. And that's my thing, is the peace with people being hurt. I can't go back. And I know that this will probably shock people, this whole moment on Facebook, and it was pretty lively, and I knew it would be, but that's what needs to happen.
let me throw one more thing out there, and this
I
is my
like
show. I promise you, that about 15 years ago, a car company called Tesla started producing a few electric cars, and the whole auto industry scoffed, and they said, nobody wants an electric car.
Yeah.
And what happened was Tesla did two things, or actually several things. One is that they made the electric car sexy, they made it fast, and they made it efficient. Right. Yeah. And once that happened, now it began to play in a luxury niche. And then they started building the Model 3 and the Model Y, right? And all of a sudden, like I have a Model 3, and it is the coolest car I've ever made, or I've ever owned. And the thing is that now the entire automobile industry is trying to play catch up. Why? Because they understand that the future of the internal combustion engine car is limited. They understand that. And that if we're going to continue to have private conveyances like this, that eventually they're going to be electric, or they're going to be hydrogen powered or something. There's going to be some exotic technology that's not gasoline involved, right? So the point that I'm getting at is that people, when Tesla first started producing cars, they produced the Roadster, then they produced the Model S, and then the Model X, and then the Model 3, and everybody said it couldn't be done. Now they are the tail wagging the dog. They are the most valuable car company in the world. And they are the ones that are dictating the engineering decisions of every other car company. So for the listeners, for Ellen's listeners, don't be afraid of playing small.
Yeah.
Because eventually, you keep on chopping away, and eventually the giant will fall. And I really believe that we'll see it in our lifetime. And I promise that's it. I'm not going to say any more, because after that, Baptist closed.
Thank you. Thank you, Derrick, for this time. Really, it's been an honor.
Thank you, Ellen. I honor you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. We will do it again, maybe. You never know.
Hey,
but Aaron Tomlinson, I thought of him today, and I thought, you know what? I need to ask him to come on.
Well, I think it's at 8 p.m. No, not 8 p.m. 9 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, he's doing one.
Yeah, he's gonna be on with Kyle Butler.
I love Kyle. I did Kyle on Instagram, so I love Kyle. Oh my God.
Kyle and Aaron are two of my best friends, and I met them through social media.
They're amazing.
But be sure to check out their live stream. And I can't say enough good things about either one of those guys. They are really instrumental in my growth, and I'm just grateful to have them, in my social circle.
I agree. All right. Thank you, Derrick.
All right, Ellen. Love you.
Love you too. Bye-bye.